Алло, привет, мамуль.
Мы сейчас, короче, получается, поселок Буча стоим.
У нас наступление вот это вот забуксовало. Мы проигрываем войну.
Ну, а так у нас 50% полка уже нету.
Дали приказ убивать каждого, кого видим.
Приезжаю, увольняюсь, нахуй, все, ебало из армии.
Путин дурак Киев хочет взять, а у нас это не получится никак.
Those are excerpts from phone calls placed by and intercepted by Russian soldiers operating in Ukraine during the initial weeks and months of the invasion. And the New York Times has actually obtained thousands of call recordings. They say that they have spent literally months verifying the authenticity by cross-referencing Russian telephone numbers with messaging apps and social media platforms so that they can specifically identify not only that they were Russian soldiers, but which specific Russian soldiers they actually were. They put 2 months into translating and cataloging them, and they are available on the New York Times right now. You heard a couple of different soldiers right there. We're gonna jump into some of the other things that they revealed because we have often had to get our information from, for instance, the media or the US government or what the Ukrainian government has released, what Russian state TV has been willing to admit. That's all biased information. While I can't personally verify the authenticity of this, the things that they're talking about are things that we know have happened. And so let's jump into some of what they've revealed. You have a soldier identified as Nikita saying, F, there are corpses lying around on the road. Civilians are just lying around. It's effed up. Right on the road? Yes, everything was effing looted. All the alcohol was effing drunk. And all the cash was taken. Everyone is doing it here. So in just a short little bit of a conversation revealing just the routine death of civilians that are just left to rot in the streets while their homes and residences, businesses are looted by the invading force. This, if you've been paying attention to war, should not come as a surprise, but it's important that people understand that this happens and that this is happening. This is what the invasion was like. They're also revealing other things that you might not have expected. One soldier named Sergei says, no one told us we were going to war. They warned us 1 day before we left. Nikita says, we were all going for training for 2 or 3 days. Fooled like little kids. These bastards didn't tell us anything. And so there is a combination of admitting to either witnessing or participating in war crimes, denouncing Putin or Russia for having no idea what they were doing, for sending them into war without training, with equipment that was not good enough, being lied to about how capable the Ukrainian forces would be. There is a massive amount of resentment and just absolutely shattered morale. Soldiers talking about being ready to either quit their military commission or just head off, just start walking and get out of there while they can. Caroline, it is dramatic stuff.
Yeah, and I think echoing back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of Michael Flynn and this like rabid interest in war, and something you're touching on here is that war has so many lies within it. And I think what these New York Times text messages and audio reveals is something very sad, but also very, I think, positive about our current situation, in that this is absolutely devastating that we are reading these words of Russian soldiers who, again, like they're supposed to be our enemy. We are supposed to be against them, and we are seeing their response to these horrific situations that they are forced to participate in. So while that is like just incredibly sad and scary, the fact that we in modernity are able to, by the internet, by social media, able to see these voices across the globe who, the powers that be are trying desperately to convince are our enemies. That's how we prohibit this escalation in the future. Of course, it's not easy, and it's probably, in this particular, in the Russian-Ukraine war, it might not even work. But holding on to these examples that this is not for us. It's not for us as Americans. It's not for average Russian people. You can't cover up dissent as you once could. And I think that's the biggest lesson that we have to take from all this? I think right now in particular, where the war is at currently is such a crucial moment that will quite literally determine like the history of maybe the rest of our generation as it comes to geopolitics, with the pipeline act leading to massive energy insecurity in Europe. Like it can't be said enough that we are at a tipping point at this moment of, I don't think anyone could have predicted the dire situation that it seems like the Russian army is in. Not only from, like you said, what we can see as Americans, which is incredibly rare to get like super accurate reporting from either side, but all we can do is hold on to these examples that this is not a war for the people. War is not for the people. And there's no amount of propaganda that should, change our minds about that.
Yeah, and they seem to get that, and hopefully some of this messaging is getting back through perhaps these phone calls. Someone in the chat I see says, if I were a Russian soldier, I'd be taking out the highest ranking officer I see. Well, so you're saying that obviously we don't support random killings. That we know that that's happening. We know that they are. I mean, that happens in a lot of wars actually, but in this it definitely is. I mean, they were losing generals and officers left and right, and regular soldiers too. I mean, one of the most just dramatic things that's been revealed is how many have been killed. One soldier, Nikita, tells his partner that 90 men were killed around him during one ambush. Another, Semyon, estimates that a third of his regiment was killed. Another describes rows of coffins containing the bodies of 400 paratroopers waiting to be returned home from an airport hangar. And I have a feeling that those will not be photographed once they make it back to Russia. I mean, Russia has had, look, the numbers of dead being reported by the Ukrainians for the Russian side, I'm sure are elevated. But the numbers that the Russians are admitting to, of course, are an underestimate. I mean, this has been a massive, needless meat grinder for Russian soldiers who probably the vast majority have no interest in this war. Now, once they get there, if they participate in war crimes, then that should be the end for them. They should be locked up for the rest of their lives. We can perhaps pity that they would not have engaged in this if they hadn't been forced to, perhaps at pain of imprisonment or death if they didn't participate. But they don't want to be here. They don't want to be doing this. Each of these quotes references an unimaginable tragedy that didn't have to happen, that could end any day. And the only reason it isn't is because Vladimir Putin chooses to continue it.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.